Democratic Congress. Yesterday, there was an Ipac meeting. The major issue was the proposal to move the elections forward to November instead of December. Doc, good morning, and thank you very much for your time.
Very good morning, and trust you are doing well.
I am also doing well, and I hope you are too.
And greetings to all your cherished listeners.
Well, Doc, let me start by asking how the Ipac meeting went, because we're all waiting with bated breath for what will be agreed when it comes to that particular issue. Did you have a consensus?
Yeah, the Ipac meeting went very well, very cordial, cogent arguments raised, and the quality of the arguments, and I'll go into them as I proceed, strongly suggested that there's no other way to hold the elections in December. And it is based on chronology. Let's just consider the fact that we are in month of January, 30th of January. Tomorrow, January ends. So we enter February tomorrow. As we speak to you, are you aware that the Electoral Commission's calendar is not out?
The EC's calendar. The political parties do not have access to the EC's calendar.
No. It's not out yet.
On January 30th?
Yes. So, assuming we have not argued against the November date, and we're going to hold elections in the first week of November, it means that on Thursday, we enter February. So if you are counting clear months, you have March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October. 7 months to November. 7 clear months to November. Not counting February, not counting November. 7 clear months to November. So if in 2016, the overwhelming evidence for the rejection of the idea was that we had about 6 to 7 months to the election. How do you repeat the same mistake in 2024? The EC had, after 2016, had 2017, 2018, 2019 to effect these amendments. The issue rests on its own. We don't subscribe to these major amendments in election year flowing from the lessons of 2016. So, after 2020 elections, the EC further had 2021, 2022, 2023 to effect these amendments. The EC once again did not. Only to spring this up in an election year that we have so many issues to address. And let me capture some of them. Do you know this year we are supposed to do another registration for those who have turned 18 and those who were already 18 but have never registered? Because the EC's register is not out, we don't even know when it is going to take place. So we only guesstimate that it may happen between March and June or July. Is that the way to progress? Beyond the registration, we all witness the difficult spectacle of equipment breakdown, network breakdown during the 2023 limited registration exercise. As we speak, we have not received a single assurance from the EC about any diagnosis made and remedies implemented. That is also another issue that we raised, that we need to diagnose and solve the problem before the December 7, 2024 election. Another issue that we raised had to do with the preparation towards the district level elections. Because the limited registration was so close, the EC had to postpone the district level election, that the assembly election. After postponing, they had to postpone the postponed election again in some electoral areas in the Ashanti region and the Eastern region. Chaos. The chaos was further exacerbated by the fact that ballot papers were not enough in certain polling stations. Can you imagine that? Said that those polling stations had to rely on adjoining polling stations to secure ballot papers to continue voting. Can you imagine if this happens in a presidential election? So there are all these issues to be addressed. The issue has not brought out any timetable that is going to guide the discourse, that is going to guide the implementation. And the EC wants to compound its woes with a constitutional amendment. Because if that constitutional amendment fails, what we have effectively done is that we have brought the presidential elections to November and the parliamentary elections will stay in December. Consider the cost to the nation of splitting the presidential and the parliamentary. Consider the cost to individual voters who would have to travel twice to go and vote, or lose hours of work to vote. Consider these congestions, if they are not remedied, how it can possibly lead to the situation that we had with SAL, where people were disenfranchised just because the calendar got so busy. Other people were looking elsewhere, and some of these things just slipped through. You recall the chaotic limited registration that we had. President Mahama went round and saw some of these scenes himself. And so we are of the strong opinion that the EC must immediately release the calendar of activities for the 2024 elections. And we made this case there. They had earlier promised they were going to release at the next Ipac meeting. Unfortunately, yesterday, it was not ready, so it was not a release. They promised again that the February meeting, they will release the calendar to us. If they release it in calendar, you can count up to November. If their November succeeds, what it will mean, how many clear months we have to November. This is why we are happy that the quality of the arguments that we canvass, Honorable Kwesi, myself, and people from other political parties, the quality of the arguments that we canvass obviously crystallized that the consensus was that, yes, it is a good idea to have a longer transition period, particularly if we can have regulations to deal with excesses of politicians who will be irresponsible with longer transitions too. But it should not be in 2024. That November idea should be looked at for 2028. But we further submitted that just as the EC allowed 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2021, 2022, and 2023 to pass without any action, we do not expect a replication of that inaction after the 2024 elections. And that immediately after the 2024 elections, 2025, 2026, the EC should move into action and ensure these amendments are done. At the meeting, the difference at that point was that the NPP felt okay to ensure that we don't even waste any more time. If it is possible for the EC to start the process even now, why not? But we strongly believe that there was too much to be done. There was too much at stake that we should just shift it to 2025. But even if it will start now, no big deal. But the most important thing is that the date of effectiveness is going to be November 2028 and not 2024.
So the agreement is that at least from 2025, this will kick off. Or it can kick off now, but the effective date cannot be 2024. It has to be after the 2024 elections.
Exactly.
Well, so in that case, was there an agreement as to the particular things that will be done if, for example, it starts now?
The process is known legally, so it starts from the executive. So the EC advises the Attorney General, goes through the Gazette, goes through Parliament. Parliament will refer it to the Council of State. It comes back to Parliament. Parliament will consider at the second reading. The MPs will cast their vote, and they will require 2/3 majority for that to happen. And this has to do with amending a non-entrenched clause like the Article 1124 of the Constitution, which pertains to parliamentary elections.
Ghana's gold.
The issue is MPs will go for the Easter break. Beyond that, during registration of voters, MPs will be busy in their constituencies registering voters. Because it's also an election year, MPs will also be busy in their constituencies, also campaigning at certain points. So, Parliament itself during an election year has its own difficulties, its own challenges.
Ghana's gold. Radio
And that is why I'm saying that if you are not careful and you don't make the two-thirds threshold to pass the parliamentary, and you've already fixed the presidential, you bifurcate, you dichotomize, you separate the presidential and the parliamentary at huge cost to the state. Because after the presidential, per the Constitution, it can take place anywhere between September 7 and December 7. But the parliamentary is specific. It is around December 7, December 8. Unless you amend Article 1124. So the process is obvious to everyone.
Ghana's
The
gold.
best thing is to start it in 2025. But if it will please others, why not? You will not oppose it. Let them start now. But it shouldn't congest the 2024 electoral calendar so that we can have a free, fair, and transparent election, congestion-free, and vote on December 7, 2024.
So it can start now, but it should not take priority over the other things that need to be done.
At all. Because it cannot. I mean, why should we take priority over printing of ballot papers? Why should we take priority over registration of voters? Why should we take priority over diagnosing the problems that the IT system of the EC have been having?
Now, in the meantime, you're asking for the release of the calendar. You said the promise is that in February, when you that's about 2 days away. In that month, when you hold the next Ipac meeting, they'll release the calendar to you.
Sure.
Which other issues were discussed? Because there were questions already being raised about some other proposals that were made initially, but never saw expression at Ipac. Where was the issue of indelible ink, for example, raised?
You are perfectly right. But Ipac, one Ipac I think cannot discuss everything. If you check the minutes very well, it's obvious that apart from LPG, all the political parties supported the use of indelible ink on December 7, 2024. And even at the NPP's parliamentary primary, they were using indelible ink. So it's clear that a consensus has been reached. So for this particular Ipac, it didn't feature, and it is obvious. We do not expect the EC to come back to that issue again. All we will check is that in the procurement for the 2024 elections, indelible ink is in there. We are not going to wait until the election day before, no. So the procurement plan must be very clear that they are going to procure indelible ink and it will be used for the election. So that is a settled matter at this stage.
Okay. It seems clearly that the National Democratic Congress is not in the mood for any major reforms in this election year.
Well, it depends on what you call a major reform. For instance, a reform that is to revamp the IT system by diagnosing the problems and fixing it is welcome. So it depends on what your iteration of what major is and what minor is.
Okay.
For example, I instructed that the party in the Upper West region petition the regional elections director of the EC to punish the EC officer in Nandom who was seen openly showing his MPP-ness. If through that, the EC will trigger major reforms to weed out such people from the system, why not? It's enhancing, it purifies the EC's own system. So such things are welcome, but not non-core 2024 requirements. Are you getting my point?
Yes, yes.
Yes. Whatever must be done to make 2024 a better election than previous elections are welcome.
So it depends on what is being proposed.
Reforms, no.
Okay. Well, I was coming to the Nandom issue, and I realized you've already raised it. So let me ask, when you say punishment, what are you asking them to do?
We don't want to be dictating at this stage, but the most important thing is that letter has been written, delivered, and we wait upon the EC to act, to see what such an egregious error will attract, whether it will be a slap on the wrist or it will be a definite and defining punishment that will let us know that the EC is serious about its independence from the political parties and not having people in there who will be doing the bidding of political parties. You know the risk involved in such a person being
Ghana's gold.
a very senior officer in a district. That person can declare results for the MPP. And when the results is declared in favor of the MPP, the remedy is only in court when you go to court. I don't want to go to court. I don't want to go to court. And so such matters, the moment they come to our attention, we act on them. It is the reason so far 919 people have written exams and have been interviewed in the NDC and are being appointed as directors and deputy directors of elections and IT in the regions and in the constituencies. And we are in the last phase of conducting the exams to fill some other vacancies. Then we are done. Then we move to the next stage of selecting 160,000 polling agents and training them adequately. We are doing our part. We have our 40-point action plan that we are following. Some of them, we cannot fix the dates, so we have put to be determined there, all because the EC has not put out a calendar. It's part of the reason we are asking for the calendar. And once the calendar is available, we will all know what inputs even to make for the EC to review its plans and programs. So, we on our part, we are crossing all T's and dotting all I's. And we assure you that we will prefer to go for meetings half naked than half prepared. Trust that the NDC will be adequately and competently represented.
You prefer to go to meetings half naked than half prepared?
Half naked than half prepared. If you know Kiki very well and understand his intellect, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. And you see, when cogent arguments, when compelling arguments have been canvassed, it's very difficult for even a biased person to walk away from it. So we will continue to push these arguments strong, logical. Keep evidence to show. And also ensure that the citizens are informed of outcomes so that when alterations are being even contemplated, the actors will think twice because the citizens have already been informed. And since after yesterday's Ipac, I've spoken to not less than, this is the 17th media house that I'm talking to ensure that people know exactly what discussed and what the crystallized consensus is. We mean business. We mean business because this country is in the wrong hands. And a vote for Boamah will be a third term for Akufo-Addo. And a third term for Akufo-Addo will be a continuation of the putrefaction and decadence that we have seen in our socio-economic lives. Whoever thought that pensioners would demonstrate against government because bonds, their lifetime savings, their retirement income securities are being stolen, let me use that word, by the government, a government that is to protect the vulnerable. Whoever thought so? But the government had just kept it, pushing people into their early graves prematurely. Whoever thought that the Ghana's cedi against the dollar will ever cross 10? When Pastor Mensah Kabel once suggested it in his wildest dreams, I spoke against it. I never believed in our lifetime this was going to happen. Today, we wish it was even 10. It's about 12. Who ever thought? Who ever thought the cost of drugs, food, beverages will be so high? Kinky, local rice, palm oil, drugs for diabetes, drugs for hypertension that people buy day in, day out because the health insurance is not working. Who ever thought? This is the state of our country. Terrible. Foreigners had to basically agree that this is how you will restructure your debt for the IMF to release the second tranche.
Ghana's gold.
And when you talk about it, they say that NDC also went to the IMF. My brother, we all go to the hospital. When you walk to the hospital one morning, you get there at 8 a.m., and if by 10 or 11, a doctor has seen you, and you walk back, you've been to the hospital. When you are taken to the hospital in an ambulance and taken straight to the intensive care unit and kept there for months, you've also been to the hospital. Is that not the case?
Yes.
Are the two scenarios the same? The NPP went to the IMF comatose and near death. The scale that we use to assess the degree of coma is called Glasgow Coma Scale. The NPP would have fared terribly on that scale if the NPP was a human being. The economy of Ghana was comatose at the time that the NPP went. So the NPP went not on a stretcher, not in a wheelchair, but in an ambulance and admitted straight to the intensive care unit. The two can never be the same. It is the reason the NPP inherited an economy that was stripped to grow at 7%, between 7 and 8%. Even if a robot had been made president in 2017, the economy was going to grow by that much. You know why? It's because the visionary John Mahama, the man who fixes problems, ensured that he inherited only one oil block. By the time he was leaving, he had added 2 more oil blocks as revenue generating points for the country. Ask what this government has used all that money for, including the wanton borrowing that we have witnessed under this administration. And what is even worse is that as they were borrowing, the finance minister's personal company was benefiting from the borrowing. So you and I, our indebtedness was his profit. What a contradiction.
Doc.
We cannot continue. We cannot sustain this situation for even one more day after January 7, 2025. That is why December 7 is decisive. It's a day of destiny to vote massively for John Dramani Mahama and NDC MPs. For him, the visionary and experienced leader, to right the wrongs and fix this country once again and put the country on a path of progress and prosperity. Implement the 24-hour economy that will generate well-paying jobs for the youth of this country. Our unemployment rate under this clueless and incompetent administration is at an all-time high. This is not the Ghana that Nkrumah envisaged. This is certainly not the Ghana President Rawlings fought for. This is not the Ghana Atta Mills toiled for. This is not the Ghana President Mahama bequeathed. This is the Akufo-Addo Bawumia NPP administration.
Doc.
But this is Ghana. Ghana And Ghanaians are hopeful that with President Mahama at the Flagstaff House, we shall get back to the promised path that will take us to the promised land.
No, thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for speaking to us. Dr. Edward Omane Boamah is Director of Elections of the National Democratic Congress, talking to us.